The Perth property market has been on a bonanza for a couple years now. If you invested in Perth, if you live in Perth, if you own your own home in Perth, you are sitting on a pile of equity or a pile of cash that you've probably never seen before. That's how much prices have risen there. 75% inside a couple of years. Insane levels of growth. But will this continue? In 20 minutes or less, I will give you the full Perth housing market update. We're going to go through everything, what's happening right now, where the opportunities are, and through this, I discover some early cracking signs for future house price growth in Perth. If you're interested in working out whether you are too late to the party or if you want to jump on the Perth Bonanza train, this video is for you. Let's go. So what's happening in Perth right now? Taking a look here, you see insane levels of growth from CoreLogic, 24.1%. These numbers are so astronomical, I've barely ever seen growth levels this high. Growth was supposedly starting to come down a little bit, but is it really? Asking prices on SQM research in the last quarter are up 7%. It's increasing even faster than what it was. Absolutely nuts. I use asking prices to get an indicator of lead price growth, like what's going to happen to house prices soon. It ain't slowing down. It's slowing down a little bit, but not really when you look at asking prices. House price growth in Perth is astronomical at the moment. If you own there, you're doing really, really well. Here's that 75% increase in Perth property prices, $341,000 made on the average property price in Perth since the pandemic. Absolutely crazy statistic there. Look at the incline here, the level of incline. This is a 25% rise. It's just so sharp. You'd have to go through periods of housing charts, and you wouldn't see too many of these inside Australia. This boom is so strong. It's happening right now before our eyes. This is probably the craziest statistic that shows it all. 11 days to sell your home in Perth. That's the days on market. It is half, pretty much everywhere, 4 times less than Melbourne. You'll be waiting a long time to sell a home in Melbourne, but 11 days. You barely wait a week. All you have to do is just list an ad up or call your local real estate agent and your house is gonna fly. Someone's gonna want it. Everyone wants your house at the moment. Vendor discounting barely exists, around 2.5%. You very much have a position where Perth sellers have a lot of power at the moment. I wish I was selling in conditions like this. Sydney isn't like this. I've sold a home recently and it was nothing like this. It took a lot longer than I wanted to, and there weren't thousands of people just being like, I'll have it, I'll have it, I'll have it. It was a little bit like pulling teeth. Sydney is a very, very different market right now. You also have the same story that you have across the country, the lowest quartile homes being driven up the most. This is the investor activity story that we've talked about in other videos. You see it here as well, up nearly 8% in a quarter in these lower priced areas. So Perth is continuing to soar along. One of the messages I take away from Perth through all of this analysis is, one of the things that I'm looking at is when I'm assessing all the other markets and trying to work out how much room do they have to run. Perth is a little bit of an insight here because Perth is leading the charge a little bit and it's already gone up 75% in the last 4 years, up 25% this year and continuing to rise. It'll have another 25% at least by this data, maybe around 20%, probably that's a safer number to say. So that sort of level of price growth is like house prices could double in a location inside 4 or 5 years. So if you're looking at a market that hasn't quite grown as much, you can probably look at the Perth data as a good sort of indication as to when does it all stop. That is something that Perth does present some information about. So the dark blue here is the change in house prices. It's more affordable areas driving the growth, but even the top premium areas are doing really well as well, rising 5% a quarter. So here's this article from the AFR, paying whatever it takes. Prestige home prices jumped 20% a year in this city. So the prestige market is doing worse than other markets, but it's only rising 20%. It's just not much. So, every market is doing really, really well in Perth. And obviously, if you own a prestige home, 20% over a higher dollar amount means in dollar terms, you're making a lot more money. It's absolutely crazy there at the moment. Here, check out these words. International and East Coast buyers are fueling a price boom in Perth's most sought after luxury coastal and riverside properties, with high-end values in Western Australia capital increasing more than 5 times the rate of Sydney in the past year. Crazy numbers here. Okay, so let's go through stock on market in Perth at the moment and how the balance of demand and supply is right now. So you have more sales than new listings. This is what CoreLogic expect in Perth. A little bit of an imbalance here. There's been more and more sellers in Perth recently, so this imbalance is being caught up a little bit, but there's still far too much demand for supply, and that's why prices are rising. We can check out current new listing levels. Look, it's above its 5-year trend. It's 10% above last year and 14% above its 5-year average. So new listings are pretty high at the moment. You'd expect. It's a millionaire's factory. That's kind of what you can call Perth. It's a millionaire's factory, and a lot of them are like, I want my $1 million. I want my money. I want my money. That's what's happening. That's what happens when prices rise so much. People are like, I want my dollars. I want to sell. There's a lot of people that are sitting there being like, I thought my home was worth $500,000. Holy moly, I haven't looked at house prices for a couple of years. I'm getting $1 million for my yeah, I'll take it. That's what happens. That's how property market cycles work. And that's why there's more and more people selling. Plus, they're probably getting hounded by real estate agents being like, hey, I've got about 50 buyers for your home. Do you want any of them to come through and take it? Now's a pretty good time to sell. It was only a few years ago where it really, really sucked. It was crickets. That is the conditions on the ground in Perth. You can also see total listings versus average. There's been a noticeable uptick recently as well. It's this little blue line trending up here. You can see the level of total listings in total beginning to rise, but still well below last year and well below the 5-year average. You'd expect to see this. There's way too much demand, not enough supply. People are buying up the home, so there's no listings popping up. And you've got that in the data, despite the increase that's happening on the ground at the moment. The big number to take away here is listing levels, total listing levels are 40% below their 5-year average in Perth at the moment. One of the things to look out for, though, is the construction industry in Perth. It's starting to respond to all of this price appreciation. We've actually got a few developer clients in Perth, Sydney-siders developing in Perth, and they're looking at it being like, hey, I wouldn't mind doing this again. They are looking at opportunities in Perth, as well as some planning changes that have occurred there that's promoting some housing supply. You can see this in the data here. Look at this big upturn in housing approvals, and the upturn in housing commencements is starting. So more and more people are getting housing approvals. We're getting close to that 2022 figure now, and it could continue to rise to that 2020-2021 figure. And this will stop the housing boom. When more and more housing comes in, this will be the thing that really caps the level of price growth and brings it back down. It won't be just existing sellers selling their homes to the people who want to buy it. It'll also be all the new homes coming into the market, and we're starting to see early signs of this. Here's this wonderful article here that says, a reprieve for Perth as dwelling completions hit a 6-year high. The strain on Perth's rental and property market could be beginning to ease. That's the starting point that you have when there's more construction activity happening. And look at this chart. It is this early indication of approvals coming up. I've said it in a couple of other videos. You really want to be looking at approvals because it's going to be key to the broader housing story in Australia. Once approvals start kicking in with all of this government action towards approvals, it means housing supply will come in. Housing supply may outstrip housing demand, and we could be in the opposite situation at some point. You need approvals to happen first, then you have commencements, and then you have completions. That's the order of the construction cycle. You get an approval, you buy a block of land, you buy something that you can put approvals on, you go to the planning authorities, you get these approvals. We've got that data starting to rise. Then the builder comes in and shovels that dirt and goes, let's start. So that's a commencement. And then the builder goes and says, here's your keys, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to your new home. That is when you actually have housing supply built in. And we have dwelling completions rising 6-year high at the moment, with approval starting. This is the first crack sign, the first danger sign, the first thing of note to note that will bring the Perth housing market back in balance, but it's going to take time. So remains in imbalance for now. Demand will outstrip supply for a period of time until this supply kicks in, until those builders start shoveling and start giving those keys to the people who want them. We can see this pressure in the rental market as well. Perth's rental yield is at 4.2%, Canberra 4.1%, Adelaide, Melbourne and Brisbane at 3.7%. Asking rents are still rising really, really quickly, up 20% this year, and vacancy rates are very, very low. So when you combine this rental story in Perth, you have yields a little bit higher than some of the other capitals. You have rents rising, your prices rising, you have not enough homes. It's the same story with Adelaide. It's just an area that is completely out of whack. There's not enough homes for the amount of people that want them. Complete shortage at the moment. The toilet paper analogy that I used during COVID, it's everyone rushing to the same aisle, ignoring all the other aisles. Sydney's the other aisle. Sydney's the fruit shop out there being like, want some fruit? Like, no, I want some toilet paper. That's what's happening. Everyone wants the same thing. Perth is that situation right now. It is a hungry area where people really want to go and buy houses, and there's not enough of them. That will continue until these homes get built. What I'm looking at here, though, is this gross rental yield, 4.2% for Perth. Look, that doesn't sound that high, but it's a relative equation. Sydney, 3%, Melbourne, 3.7%, Brisbane, 3.7%. There's room for this rental yield to come down. And if asking rents continue to go up and rents continue to rise a little bit, it's slowing, but rents continue to rise a little bit, and the house prices rise a little bit, this rental yield could come down a little bit more via higher house prices. So what I'm trying to say here is there is capacity for house prices in Perth to continue to rise. There is some element of affordability. It's not great, but there is some element of relative affordability in Perth there. If you're a renter in Adelaide, you might even be like, maybe I'll move to Perth. Job market's pretty good. Things are pretty good there. Rent is a bit cheaper, as crazy as that is. It's more affordable than Adelaide. That sounds a bit crazy, but that could create even more housing demand with people coming into Perth because it is relatively more affordable. We have got wind of that story a lot. A lot of our clients, particularly in around Sydney, have moved over to Perth for job opportunities, particularly in the medical field. We've noticed that. Maybe it's just anecdotal, but we've heard many of those stories where people are moving to Perth for jobs and also for the housing acceleration that exists there as well. Okay, so that's Perth at the moment. You've got the lay of the land. It's in boomtown mode. But what does it look like in future? Let's look at its economic performance. Economic growth in WA in this CommSec State of States is a little bit weak. Retail spending is a little bit weak. Equipment investment's really strong. Employment growth, exceptional, which is something you really want to see. Population growth, exceptional. But housing work, construction work is 6 times the Australian average. So it's the only place in Australia that's actually building homes now. They must be doing something right because they created a big problem, but they seem to be trying to address it, and more builders are coming in and doing the work. You probably expect that when house prices rise so much, but Adelaide seems to be struggling with this for some reason. In terms of the employment market, you really want to track this as well. Unemployment rate at 3.9%. It's up a little bit from 2023, but nothing major. Employment growth from this month onwards, from August 2024, depending on when you look at, about 3.1%, higher than average. In CommSec State of States in July, it was 4%. So employment growth slowing down a little bit, but still very strong. Job ads down about 15%. But still beating the average. But the participation rate is down 1.3% in a year. So the employment market is slowing down a little bit, probably a bit more than I'd want to see. So that's something to just be mindful of when looking at the Perth market. But it's still pretty strong. You can see that in all these charts here, we've got employment growth really, really high, upward trend, unemployment rate, downward trend, and online job ads coming down, but still off a very high base. In terms of the sectors of employment, health and social assistance has increased a lot. Construction will see an increase, particularly if there's rate cuts as well. Mining has seen a decrease. Very interesting. Some of those mining jobs are going out into other sectors. We have a full breakdown there. Now, one of the things that people ask us all the time, and one of the questions that I really want to know if I'm a Perth investor is, who is buying houses? Is it owner-occupiers or is it investors? And when I did a deep dive into ABS data, I found out exactly what I thought. Investor activity in Perth has skyrocketed so much. I've never seen a statistic so big here for Perth. Up 139% in about 18 months. Since January 2023, investor activity is flying. Owner-occupier activity is also doing really, really well, much stronger than every other state, up 35%. So yes, you have investor activity really, really high, but they're fighting with owner-occupiers because more and more owner-occupiers are trying to buy a home too. This is what you kind of want to see. Yes, investors coming in, that's a bit scary, but you want to see owner-occupiers trying to fight for a home too. It's really, really strong signals when you know that it's driven by job growth and economic growth too. That's what you can see in the Perth market. So what's my takeout on all of this? Is Perth a yay or a nay to invest in? If I'm looking at this, I think Perth is going to do pretty damn well for the next 6-12 months. I've mentioned that on a few different podcast episodes with Kurt that I expect Perth to be leading the charge. But this approval story is the first sign, it's the first danger sign that I expected to see at some point. It's starting to come out. The economy might slow a little bit more, and it's not as interest rate sensitive as other states. So I probably wouldn't be parking my money in here, but I do expect it to do very well. And the only reason why I wouldn't park my money in here is because it's already done so well. I'm too late to the party. It's like coming in at 10 o'clock to the party and being like, trying to catch up with all the drinks that you want. That's just too difficult to do. You're probably going to fall over trying to join the party too late and crash and burn. Don't want to do that. Hence, I probably wouldn't be buying in Perth, but I wouldn't be selling either. I'd be looking at this approval data, watching and waiting before deciding whether it's time to sell and cash out. I think you'll make another 20 or 30% in the next year or two. This rapid growth rate exists, so take advantage of it if you can. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like, subscribe button. It really do me a favor. And if you're interested in any other capital cities or any other bits of research, I'd love to hear from you because I want to know what you want to hear when providing these sort of analysis. Do you want me to do a different state? Do you want me to get deep dive into Perth, different capitals? I'd love to hear from you. So drop a comment below with your thoughts and what you think I should be talking about, and I'll go and do the research into that area.